Good evening. We bid you welcome. And that is my best Dracula, and that's all I got. Welcome to the Horror Ghouls podcast. We review movies in detail and have a good time. Hopefully, that's why you have returned. And if you're new, welcome. We are happy to have you. I am Megan,
And I'm T.
and we are going to jump right in today. But let me ask you first, did you take a look at any of the movie posters or art for this movie we're about to talk about?
No.
Okay. So, the film which we are going to discuss had a fun tagline on the poster. When I saw it, I was like, "Oh, that's fun." It said, "Who will survive and what will be left of them?"
Oh.
Solid, right?
Mm-hmm.
This film had an opening crawl a la Star Wars, which I will share with you now. The film, which we are about to review, is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of five youths, in particular, Sally Hardesty and her invalid brother, Franklin. It is all the more tragic in that they were young. But had they lived very, very long lives, they could not have expected, nor would they have wished, to see as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day. For them, an idyllic summer afternoon drive became a nightmare. The events of that day were to lead to the discovery of some of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of American history, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Directed by Tobe Hooper, released in 1974. So there was no better way to introduce the movie, right? Like it's
None.
that had
Yeah,
it, right?
that's the best way to do it.
Um, so we're gonna go all the way back to the beginning of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which has a bajillion incarnations at this point, right? There's
Yeah.
so many. There's a reboot and then a million
Prequels
sequels,
and sequels.
prequels, and
Yeah.
everything else in between they could possibly have made. So we start with digging sounds on a dark screen and the flash of a photo bulb. We see grotesque imagery of dead bodies, and it's gross. In the background, while we come to present day, I'll say, a radio details a report of a grisly sight, really, really rotty, gooey corpses, creating a ghastly monument near Newt, Texas, which is in Muerto County. Go figure. An investigation turns up many empty crypts in the cemetery, some only partially empty, with only parts of bodies removed.
Mm,
So that's fun. It was like all of these,
yeah.
even the flashes in the beginning, it's like very badly decomposed. And you have to assume it's because of the heat, because we're in Texas,
Yeah, I would
right?
say that. And you know what's interesting that whole description was a real live description of an Ed Gein site because Ed Gein is not actually a serial killer, but he only killed two people. So that doesn't make him a serial killer. Interestingly enough, but he was a grave robber and he would rob graves and he would desecrate the graves and wear their skin as dresses. Um, so yeah.
Also, fun fact, while we're talking about it, because you're making this reference, so this movie was partially inspired by him. Also, um, oh my gosh, just went out of my head. We just said it before. Silence of the Lambs, Buffalo Bill wearing people's skin,
Mm,
also loosely inspired by our friend Ed Gein. So there's that.
yes.
So we come to, or we see now a van, and we meet Franklin Hardesty, who is wheelchair bound. He gets rolled into the bushes to pee and winds up rolling down a hill when a large breeze generated by a passing semi truck rolls by. But don't worry, he's okay. It was
Unfortunately.
we'll get into more of that. We'll find out why. This was kind of a needless scene
It
just
was.
immediately because then they all get back in the van, they're just driving down the road. So that we just shot a man out of a wheelchair for no
For no
reason.
reason.
That's a tiny bit not great, but I digress. Back in the van, Franklin, Kirk, Jerry, Pam, and Sally are driving. Pam is reading from an astrology book to the driver, Jerry. So she's one of them woo-woo girls like us. And they
Hmm.
drive by the cemetery, and we see in the one that we saw in our opening sequence to check on Sally's, I believe, granddaddy's remains.
Yeah.
A bunch of local workers are laying around drunk, but they let her pass. And a bunch of people have also descended upon the cemetery to check on the remains of their loved ones to make sure that they weren't among those that were missing, stolen, or mounted on a, grave for all to see. When they leave the cemetery and are driving along, they notice an awful smell, and Franklin identifies a slaughterhouse in the distance. He said his grandpa used to sell cattle there. Franklin then gets very descriptive when talking about how animals were unalived for food. The way he's
Yeah.
talking about it is very violent and gross. So they identify a hitchhiker ahead and discuss if they should pick him up. Surprisingly to me, most people are in fact on board with this. I know that this is the 70s, like I get that,
Yeah.
but it's still when everyone's like, "Yeah, let's get him. It's hot outside."
I mean, I do know that like during those times people were much more, and even in the 80s, there was a whole show on HBO called The Hitchhiker, and people were like picking people up all the time. I mean, I think that show was a little odd. But I mean, I guess they felt like, hey, he seems normal. And it's like, five of us, well, really, four, can't count Franklin in the wheelchair, because he can't fight or anything if something
No.
happens. But I guess they felt like it was safe. I don't think that's safe,
But
but
how can you assess in that amount of time, like this person looks okay? You're just seeing their back or their thumb or whatever,
yeah,
running down the road. That wouldn't be me, no matter what time. I'd be like, no.
nah,
Um, so with that being said, if you were driving down the highway tomorrow, would you pick up a hitchhiker?
no.
Would there be any circumstance in which you would pick up a hitchhiker?
Unfortunately, I have in the past, but I won't anymore. I have, and I've lived to tell the tale at least.
And she
So,
learned a
yeah,
lesson.
I definitely did. I learned a great lesson. I mean, nothing happened to me, nothing bad happened. But I just know that I would never do that because in today's society, you cannot trust anybody. Man, woman, child. You can't trust anyone.
No.
But I mean, back then it was almost the days of pure innocence. You had like the 50s and the 60s where people were like a little more innocent. So going into the early 70s, I feel like that innocence was still there. And the whole serial killer thing was just starting to become a lot more prevalent during that time, I think.
Right.
So I think people were kind of still in like the bubble of, oh, we're good people, so they're good people.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that almost a period of innocence is very much an illusion because people were just hiding behind, I don't know, formality in a
That's
sense,
true.
but they're still doing terrible things behind the scenes.
That's
Um,
true.
you know. So they pick up this guy and he looks a bit squirrely, just immediately, just a little different. He talks about how he worked in a slaughterhouse and his family has always been in meat. He emphasized. That's weird. That's a weird statement.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's talking with Franklin more about the execution process in the slaughterhouse, which is gross, and agrees that the older, more violent way of doing things was better, because the less terrible way also put people out of jobs.
Yeah.
So he does have some gross Polaroids out of his, he grabs them out of his roadkill bag, which he
Hangs
has.
around his neck.
Yeah, it's, everyone has a roadkill bag. And he also talks about gross things that I know I've said gross so many times already. They do with animal body parts, like different ways they cook them and just no, no, thank you. Not interested. So I do hope I'm watching all this and I'm like, are they immediately questioning their life choices that have brought them to this moment? Because I hope that they are.
I'm
This was like
sure.
all of the weirdness that happened was like almost instantaneous when he gets in the van.
I think everybody but Franklin at this
Franklin's
time.
like, I've made a new friend. Like,
Right. So everybody but Franklin was put off by this guy.
right.
So,
Yeah. So Sally is just like, can you guys change the subject, please? Because this is a bit much. Franklin, he has a little pocket knife and he kind of uses it to pick out his nails occasionally. He does this, after all this weird conversation. The hitchhiker snatches this and laughing slices his palm while everyone looks on in horror. While they're looking on in horror, he just laughs harder. Like he's like, "Yay, this
yeah.
is fun." He also just kind of seems a bit disconnected from reality.
Yeah,
Like
very much so.
he's out there. He's very giggly, just strange. Um, this does, we start to see it have an impact on the other people in the van. He's like, take me back to my house. You can come have dinner with my family. It's right off this road.
And
But
he's
it's like,
like, "You like head cheese, don't you?" Which
oh,
is
yeah.
nasty.
No, it's disgusting. But it's like, if you live right off the road, why were you hitchhiking?
Right. And
Why
that's
don't you
what they
just,
say.
yeah, she's just like, why couldn't you just walk? Or, like they were saying they could drop him off where they were at and you could just walk. And he was like, no, no, just take me, take me the rest of the way. So this guy, this hitchhiker has kind of like a, I'm not sure if it's a Polaroid camera, like it produces Polaroids. So I
Yeah,
guess,
it was a very old school type of camera, but it was like instant Polaroid. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So he takes a photo of all of them staring at him like he's out of his mind. And then he gives it to Franklin and he's like, it's a great picture. It's $2. You have to give me $2 now. And everyone's like, what? Like,
Wait,
no
I
one,
think that picture was just Franklin, wasn't it?
no, it was all of them.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Like
Okay.
he leaned back and he took it.
Okay.
Um, I mean, as far as I know, that's what it seemed like to me. Um, but yeah, he tries to get $2 and they're all like, just give it back to him. Don't. So he gives it back to the hitchhiker who takes out foil and like some, was it like, what
I
was
think it seemed like gunpowder almost or
Okay.
something.
Yeah, he like sprinkles this gunpowder on it. I was like, is it dirt? Like, I don't know.
I thought he was about to smoke a doobie, to be
I thought he was
honest.
gonna roll it up too. Yeah, yeah. I was like, are you gonna smoke a Polaroid? Because
Right?
there's chemicals.
Chemicals.
Yeah. But so when he sets this off, it starts to crackle and it does go on fire, and now everyone's freaking out and yelling at him. He then grabs his own knife, which is more like a straight razor. It's not
Yeah.
like a knife. And he cuts into Franklin's arm, and at this point they pull over and they just throw him out of the van. And he proceeds to wipe his bloody hand all over the side
Hmm.
and makes a bunch of weird faces at them, like almost very childish too, like sticking out his tongue, being like, yeah,
And those weird noises that give me the heebie-jeebies. Yeah.
he makes some weird mouth sounds.
Yeah.
And he's just being a big old weirdo. So Franklin, back in the car, and this isn't so much Franklin as the actor, terribly overacting in this scene. Like the way that he's like, oh, oh, my hand hurts. Like it's really bad. And I'm really sorry, sir, to like if you're in a movie. Like I've never been in a movie, so it's like I can say whatever, but it's probably hard to, especially I imagine the conditions they were under because he was sweating profusely in the car, but it was not good acting. So Pam goes back to reading her astrology book and we find out that Sally is a Capricorn, your favorite.
I know.
No. When they said that, I was like, oh, uh-oh. Okay. So at a local gas station slash bait and tackle slash barbecue emporium, I guess.
Interesting.
This, yeah, it's a one-stop shop. That's it. They stop for the girls to use the bathroom and get some gas, but unfortunately, the gas station is dry. They have no gas. Franklin asks if the owner, I guess he's the owner, right? He just appears
Yeah.
to be the owner. Um, he's wearing like all brown, like a UPS outfit. He's asking if he knows where the old Franklin place is, and the guy seems kind of interested, but hesitant to give him information. He actually tries to talk them out of going over there and says it's dangerous. It's a big old house, the neighbors aren't friendly, whatever. Franklin says his dad actually owns the place, but the guy's like, meh, better, better not. So Jerry, remember he's the driver, he goes into a inquire where else they could go get gas because there's nothing, remember. And they told him the closest place is Newt, which is where I believe they had just come from. So
Yep.
they gotta go back. Um, and they're telling Sally to hurry her ass up and get in the van so they could go to the grandpa's house and maybe go swim in like a creek. I've heard it referred to as a creek and a swimming hole at
Yeah,
different points.
yeah, I definitely heard swimming hole. So
Same. Franklin can't stop thinking about the hitchhiker. He's wondering aloud if maybe he did something to make him mad, or maybe was he trying to scare them by like lighting that picture up? He can't get this out of his head. So they pull into this driveway of an enormous house, which does look a little creepy, but I love big old creepy houses, and it looks like if you just put a little work into it, it would be beautiful. Um, it's very dilapidated though. Like all the
Very much
rooms
so.
are, yeah, falling apart. There's gaps in the walls and all kind of stuff. So when they're all unloading from the van though, they notice the hitchhiker marked it. It's like a weird Z or like an S or something,
Yeah.
right? Could you make out what that was? I wasn't sure,
I wasn't really sure what it was myself.
right? Like I
Yeah.
don't
I just thought it was just some finger painting. I don't know.
know. Yeah, like trying to, I don't know, get whatever as they rode away from him. Franklin wonders again in this moment when he's looking at the side and he's like, "Do you guys think he would follow us? Like why?" Franklin just is really got this guy in the brain. So again, the group is walking through this dilapidated house where her grandfather, Sally's, once lived. Very cool. I was very interested. I kept looking. They're like, this room has this wallpaper. I was like, ooh. Like, do you, I will say, do you ever play Sims?
Oh yeah.
I used to love making the houses almost more than anything else. Like I would buy like build it from the ground up, um, and make it all creepy with like cool wallpaper and stuff. So anyway, um, there is a very, very extended, very unnecessary sequence of Franklin having a hard time navigating into and around the house and being pissed off that he has come on this trip. His sister or the friends or someone apparently was like, this is going to be a lot of fun, whatever. And the thing is, if this scene served any purpose at all, like if they were setting it up for something later or whatever, it doesn't need to be there, but it's so long.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It
um,
is. It is. And it just makes you know even more that that character is horrible and he's annoying. He was annoying when he kept asking, like, why did he take my picture? He was annoying when he asked about the blood smear on the side of the van. He was annoying when he kept saying, you think he could follow us? And he was annoying when he was upset that everyone who had legs walked away from him and left him outside to clean up the van. And he's like now trying to get through the brush to get inside the house. And he's
yeah,
calling out for people who clearly these are two couples, it seems like,
yeah.
at that. You know what I'm saying? So you are the fifth wheel, no pun intended. You know what I'm saying? So,
It's interesting because it's like putting myself in his shoes. If we're at like an old house and there's no paths and there's nothing, I'm mad too that you left me. Like I get it, but it's so much like his reactions like the guy like the hitchhiker, right? They're so juvenile. He's like making that like weird like mouth fart sound, whatever. And
yeah.
he's like making faces and doing like a mocking voice, like, come along, it'll be fun, blah blah. Like, and then he starts because he hears them laughing, making fun of them laughing in like a high-pitched, weird voice. And it's all just so obnoxious. Um, so I agree. He's a character that I was like, I'm not really
Just
about it.
by the way, he stayed in character like that the entire time they were
No.
filming because he is a method actor. And so there's somebody else on the set. In fact, you know, I'll just say it now.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, the guy who plays Leatherface, he said he hated him because
Gunnar,
yeah,
that's Gunnar Hansen, right?
yeah, because he hated him because he talked and acted like that the entire time. And he said like way later on they met at like another event and dude was completely fine and they were friends up until the guy who plays Franklin died. So but on set he acted like that the entire time. He never came out of character.
Oh, that's like very, hold on. I just looked him up because I'm like, you're saying he's a method actor, and I'm like, well, that's interesting because I don't believe I've ever seen him in anything else.
Well, yeah,
Um,
no, almost nobody from this, except for the narrator. The narrator went on because I forget his name, but if you see his face, he is famous. Um, and the director, those are the only two people who went on to have actual careers. No one else had like an actual viable career after this movie.
So I just looked up just out of curiosity his filmography, and he worked mainly in the 70s. He actually was in The Return of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre in 1995, but he just played a hospital orderly, so they just kind of threw him a bone.
Yeah.
These other movies I haven't even heard of. His last movie, he is credited as an alcoholic. That's the whole line. Did he method act for that too? So he was just totally shit-faced. Like what? Like,
Probably.
oh, he was in The Life of David Gale. That's
Okay.
actually a really good movie. So, just a quick plug for this movie. Well, we're not going to plug Kevin Spacey. That's not a thing that we're going to do. But I watched this movie in Criminal Justice, in high school. It's a crime thriller, but it's about capital punishment. It was
Mm.
very interesting, and we're just going to pretend that Kevin Spacey is not in it. So I'm just put that plug in there for you guys. Uh, so yes, but imagine you're so irritating that Leatherface himself hates your guts. Like even the actor, he's just like,
Yeah.
can't stand this guy. Um, what else did Gunner do, by the way? Do we know? Because I know he did this.
I don't know offhand,
Do
to
you
be
remember
quite
when we saw
honest.
him? I know last episode we talked a little bit about when we went to Monster Mania. I didn't line up to meet him. He seemed like a nice guy. Um,
Yeah, I'm sure he was. I didn't really even because at that point I had not seen this movie, so I didn't pay
oh,
too much attention, but I do remember him being there.
yes. Well, he was very quiet. And like we happened to be kind of in there were multiple leather faces in one place. And it just happened to be kind of like a lull in the room. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
So I actually got a picture of him just like hanging out, but
Oh
he
yeah.
was in a lot of stuff. Even in he had a cameo in Texas Chainsaw 3D,
Oh yeah. Joy.
but he was in a lot like he had credits. He was in Freak Show. Yes.
Oh, nice.
Yes. Campfire Tales. So Gunnar had I'm gonna call he's like a B movie hotshot, right? Which you
Yeah.
know is like my thing. Like I love a B movie. Also, speaking of B movies, my last plug before I move on, Zombie Strippers. Jenna Jameson, Robert Englund, masterpiece. Absolute masterpiece. We have to do that one day.
Oh my God.
Robert Englund plays a germaphobe in that movie. It's way different than what you're used to seeing. It's like he always has a little like Febreze can that he's just like spraying at people.
Oh my God.
So good. Perfect. Anyway, pulling it back, um, Kirk and Pam run off to check out the swimming hole and leave Franklin. And he finds something unsettling. It's a bunch of bones laid out. Almost, it looks like a pillowcase or something. Like it's a little like nest,
Yeah, it does look like a nest or something.
right? There's different kind of bones. There's like a spine and all kind of stuff. And there's some feathers like among the bones. And he calls out to Sally to like tell her about it. But when he looks up, he sees there's a wind chime that's made out of bones.
That to me looked like
Blair Witch. No, I don't
it
know.
definitely it, no, it definitely gave me Blair Witch, but it also gave me like some type of hanging totem.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I was like, oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, I agree. Um, so outside, Kirk and Pam are frolicking about, looking for the water hole or creek or whatever, but it appears to be dried up. They do see another property in the distance, and they continue to hike in that direction. As we get closer, we see that the property is a bit run down. There's like a bunch of pots and lids and like clocks and stuff hanging from trees. They find a ton of cars concealed under vines in kind of like a makeshift, not even a garage. Like I don't even know,
Yeah,
like a carport kind of.
it's
I
sort
don't
of, kind of.
know. Yeah, that's if I'm just trying to paint a word picture, that's kind of the best I can do. They hear something running and they discover it's a generator. So they call out to see if anyone's around. There's no answer.
Because
They
now
can,
they're looking for gas. They're thinking they can get gas from this person with the generator.
right.
Yeah,
So they're just walking around, and this property has a bunch of structures. So they find a house, they go up to the main house, and they knock on the door.
which is
So,
closed.
which is it's a closed door. And for me, I am never going up to a stranger's door unless it's an emergency situation for anything, especially not in the middle of nowhere, because people aren't used to that. You
Right.
know what I mean? In like a country kind of surrounding, even if like you can, but it doesn't mean you should. So just
Well,
gonna say that.
I think in this situation, because Kirk is assuming that this is more of an emergency because they need gas. Because at this point, they've been to the one place, they know the other gas station is back where they came from. So they're like, we have to get gas. Because I think at one point somebody says, hey, we have to get gas. And he's even like, oh,
Yeah.
I'll sell my guitar to get the gas or whatever. And
Yeah.
so
I mean,
I
I think
guess
if they really wanted gas that bad, perhaps they would have kept driving, then made a pit stop at old granddaddy's dilapidated funhouse of horrors. I don't know. That's just common sense, people. Please, can we
yes.
just but I get what you're saying. It makes sense. So while they're waiting for an answer, Kirk finds just a lone tooth on the porch, which he jokingly gives to Pam, and she is immediately repulsed. Um, so Kirk, who's at the front, I think he opens the screen door, doesn't he? And
Yeah, he
he's like,
oh
yeah,
and
he
then
opens the
pushes the
other
other
door.
one.
This irritated me so much. And he keeps saying the amount of times he said hello is just annoying because obviously nobody is there.
Right.
He's
Or
like,
they're there and
hello,
don't
hello.
care about you knocking,
Right.
you know?
So mind your business. But it was excessive, the amount of times they tried to like make contact.
Hmm.
So Pam, who has maybe the only sense in this group, she keeps saying they need to go. But Kirk, I noted, is a nosy jerk and he's very persistent and he keeps calling out. So, peeking inside the house, he sees there's a doorway, right in front of him. And beyond the doorway is this wall that's covered in tons of animal skulls. This dummy invites himself into the house and goes to look at the wall. He trips because there's a little ramp and he is met by Leatherface. Leatherface is an enormous man who is wearing I'll say like the mummified skin of another person on his face.
Yeah,
It's very like it's old. It's not fresh.
not
It's
at all. It's very
it's
leathery and Leatherface. Hey, there you go.
it's leather face. There it is. He's also wearing a long apron over his clothes because he likes to be neat, I guess, maybe. He smashes Kirk repeatedly with a sledgehammer, I believe. It was like or like a little
It looked like a mallet
hammer.
even. Yeah,
Yeah, like a short.
like a hard mallet, but I have a problem.
What's the problem?
Why was he shaking like that? Like, okay, he was getting hit in the
Oh,
head.
yeah.
Kirk is getting hit in the head and it he just started flailing like a fish out of water. And it's so distracting because that's like this is bad. Like, why would you be what would make you think as an actor that this is how
That's
you
the
should
choice.
right,
That's the
this is how
choice.
you should be acting if you get hit. And if the director directed you to do that, why would he think that this is how you should get hit? Like he got hit on the head and he was like,
Yeah, it
it's
was
like, why? Why are you doing this?
there are a few times where there is some like crazy overacting in this movie. The only
Yes.
thing that I could think of when I was watching that was like maybe he thought like if he was hit in a certain part of the brain, it would have that kind of response. Do you know what I mean? Because different parts
Possibly.
of your brain control different things. I don't think they got that deep with it. I'm gonna be honest. That's like I'm just giving them the benefit of the doubt. Um, but what I what I also liked about the scene, so Leatherface, after he bonks him over and over on the head, he drags him like behind the doorway so you can't see him at all. And then he slams this metal door um that I guess was built because we didn't know it was there before, right? So it was behind and he closes it. So now it's like the door frame and the metal door. But he did it like he was so pissed. And that's what I thought was funny. He was like, God damn, like, because Leatherface doesn't speak. So it's just we have his body language, and sometimes he makes kind of like I don't know, like little sounds to indicate
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
Um, but he doesn't speak. So just like from that, he's like, God, shit. Like that's I thought that was funny. And
Funny
also I
enough,
love Leatherface, yes.
Gunner, he went to a school for people who were on the spectrum and followed them around for a day. And so
Oh my
that's where he
gosh.
got all the mannerisms. And he wanted to be very respectful because Leatherface is someone who has the mind of a child and he does whatever his family tells him to do. But he does get angry. He has anger issues, but that's why he doesn't like make any noises because he was trying to like basically mimic what he saw when he was at that school. And he actually wanted to make sure and he asked, like, I hope I did well with this. And
Oh,
by and large, that community said that he was very respectful when he was like mimicking
murdering
their
people.
when he was mimicking their actions. So
Um,
yeah,
I love that. Something I read, because we don't know exactly what is wrong with Leatherface. Like we don't know, we don't have a diagnosis. I read somewhere that like maybe when he was about 12, he had some kind of like degenerative disorder or something like that that kept him like at that age. Now it could be any number of things, but it's like you said, he has this mind of a child. Um, and he acts out a little bit sometimes, particularly rather when people invite themselves into his home, you
which
know,
he should.
which I get. I get it. So I don't know. I could visualize that scene where he's slamming the door and he's mad. So Pam, who was outside, she doesn't hear anything else from Kirk and walks back over to the door to investigate. She too opens the door and goes inside.
Now she had a reason though.
She
I
did.
will,
She's looking for her friend, but still everyone's inviting themselves into this house, and I think that's
yeah.
very rude. So in her investigation, she flings open curtains to this room and trips and falls into a room full of feathers and bones. There's bones around.
Which are
Um,
real.
that's fun. So a chicken, I have a question about that in a moment. A chicken in a small cage is clucking nearby, and there are some big human bones around. So first we see just kind of like little animal bones, but then we're seeing like femurs and jawbones and things like that. There's also a couch with some fancy bone accessories, very fancy.
Yep.
Um, so all kinds of bones, bone art, like all kinds of contraptions they made human and animal. So here's my question for you that I don't know if you know, but you have mentioned something that interested me. So they're real bones, you say.
Yes.
Where did they get real human bones?
They got
As a
them
question.
from a supplier in India.
Oh,
Yep. There's a human remains supplier in India who gave them the bones. And they also did use carcasses from a veterinary hospital as well for any
oh.
of the animal bodies you may have seen around. So they did outsource those too. There weren't like people on set that they just said, "You're next." Um, but yeah,
Well,
every single bone that you saw in that movie was real.
or like, they're like, you know how we started the movie with grave robbing?
Right?
No reason. Yeah. Um, that's pretty crazy. I mean, I sincerely hope that whoever's bones wound up in this movie consented prior to death. I feel like they probably didn't, but
I mean, to have a human remains supplier is kind of odd to me because it's not like this is a like an organ donation type thing. It's a human remains supplier. Why are we supplying human remains to people?
right.
I
And
mean, it,
also we don't know like regulations in other countries. How do they regulate things like that? So that's why
that's true.
I'm like, I hope that someone signed off on that, but I feel like they didn't, especially in the 70s. Like,
Yeah. So
so yeah. Wow, okay. Well, I bet some people got haunted after that. Um, moving on. So Pam is laying in the featherbone room, gagging and screeching so much, excessively, which I'm just gonna say, you broke into someone's house and now you're being very rude about their decor choices, right? That's like Goldilocks, and she's like, "Ugh, these chairs are terrible." Like, no one
right?
asked you. This isn't your house, right?
Who made this porridge? It's gross. Girl,
Like,
get your
you're
own
welcome.
porridge, right?
You're welcome, I guess. So she Pam goes to run outside and she's passing the doorway where our friend Leatherface appeared just a few moments ago and slammed that door so nicely. As she passes, Leatherface flings the door open and he goes after her. She makes it to the porch, but he drags her back inside, which has to be extra frustrating for you trying to get away that you've made it outside and someone just grabs you
Right.
and hauls your ass backwards. Um, so he takes her into a special room. So we do get to see now what's behind that metal door. And he hangs her on a meat hook. And I mean, he just forks her right onto it. Like he's like, here, this is where you go now. We see
Yeah.
Kirk is laid out on the table. He's non-responsive, it appears.
I think
That's
he was
just,
dead. Yeah.
yeah, he might have been. So Leatherface starts up his chainsaw and begins to take Jason apart on the table.
You say
So
Jason apart?
I did. I wrote Jason. I must have been thinking about Jason Voorhees. Jerry? Jerry?
That's Kirk. No, that's Kirk. It's
Kirk.
Kirk.
Yeah, see, this is why I have to write down names because otherwise, I'm like, boop, like a goldfish. Jason, where'd I get Jason from? Wow. I love Friday the 13th. So anyway,
Right?
anyway, Franklin, Jerry, not Jason, there's no Jason in this movie, and Pam are waiting by the van. Jerry is teasing Franklin about the hitchhiker because he probably wouldn't shut the hell up about him this whole time. So Jerry takes off to find Kirk and Pam while Sally and Franklin wait by the car. Franklin's mad because his knife is missing. Sally can't find it. It's annoying. Their whole exchange is silly. Franklin is asking Sally if she's mad he came on the trip. She's like, no, I'm just tired. But then he keeps asking her questions and she's like, what? She's like, not about it.
Yeah. Which
Um,
they didn't like each other in real life, like those two actors. So if you've seen this movie and you see how because it seems like they're actually fighting, like brother and sister, regardless, it's very real, but that's
yeah.
because they were aggravated by the heat. And also they just did not like each other. And it's probably because that man was in method acting the entire time. So
But like what are you method acting that you're just really
annoying.
irritating? Yeah, that's
Right. Like you can walk, but you're asking people to roll you to the bathroom. Like
his agent's like, listen, just go with it. It's the only way to do it. That's really that's really crazy. So Franklin is also asking Sally if she believes what Pam had said earlier about Saturn being in retrograde, because that's something she read in her book that was like indicating maybe some chaos, bad things will happen abruptly, blah blah blah, which is not really what Saturn in retrograde is about, but that's not what this podcast is about. So
Mhm.
so but whatever. Kirk is walking around the property. We see it's dusk now and the sun is starting to go down.
You mean Jerry? Kirk is dead. So Jerry.
I got the names all crazy here. Yes, thank you, Jerry. Jerry. So Jerry finds his way over to the house and knocks on the door. He peers inside but turns to leave. However, he finds Pam and Kirk's blanket on the railing from what they took before and thinks they really are there. So he goes back and calls through the door. He too opens the door and walks in. He hears a muffled sound. It's almost like a cry or like a moan. The captions had it noted as giggling, but I disagree
I
with
didn't hear
that.
any giggling.
No,
No.
the caption person was probably just like, I don't know what this noise is, so I'm just
Giggling.
giggling. He walks back to that same room where Kirk and Pam were before, which is like a kitchen.
Yeah,
It's
it's a kitchen.
small, but it's a kitchen. That's the room with the meat hooks and such. But there's no one in there now. He opens a freezer and finds Pam in the freezer. At that moment, Leatherface runs in from another room, bonking him on the head. That's
Wait,
a
wait.
Leatherface move. What?
We not gonna pass this part about old Pam in the freezer. Pam looks dead in the freezer,
Oh
and it
yeah,
sounds like she's like knocking or something. But when he opens up the freezer, she all of a sudden just jumps out like
yeah. Hmm.
she's alive, but then slumps over the side. I'm like, was she dead or was she not dead?
It's the
Like,
overacting again. Yeah. So that's, I guess that kind of distracts him for a moment. then that's why Leatherface is able to come up on him so fast.
Yeah, it could have been a
But
cheap jump scare too, because I think that's the only time I actually jumped because I didn't expect her to like rise from the dead
well, they
like
show
that.
her first. They show her like blue,
Yeah, that's what I'm
pretty much.
saying.
They show her blue, and then all of a sudden she's just up and flailing about. Another funny Leatherface moment here for me. Maybe it's not funny to regular people, but when he after he smashes Jerry on the head, he just goes back and just shoves Pam in. Just
Right,
like
all
starts
hard. He's like,
really
ooh,
crazy, like get in there, and then smashes the lid, I guess,
yeah.
the lid back down. Um, and he actually takes a moment. Um, he walks around the house and he seems distressed. Like Leatherface is having a stressy day where he's like looking out the window and he sits down, he puts his head in his hands. This he did not expect all these people in his house. Like I'll tell you what.
Yeah,
Um, at the time when I first watched that, I was like, did Jerry escape? Like, is that why he's upset? But he didn't escape. Like, he just
no.
was sad. He's just sad. He's having some big feelings, right? So it's full-time night now, full nighttime. Sally and Franklin are still waiting at this at the van all this time later. Franklin says they should go back to the gas station for help, and Sally says she's just going to go look for her friends. They fight again,
Another
um,
annoying scene.
annoying over the flashlight. They realize one of the other guys took the van keys. This again is one of those sequences like it's too much of them bitching at each other. It's just it could have been much shorter. Um, they do finally go to look for their missing people together. Sally pushes Franklin's wheelchair through the brush, and they see a light in the distance, which is the house that all their friends keep disappearing into. They head in that direction. Just then, Leatherface pops out of the bushes because he's taken a evening stroll, I guess, and he takes his chainsaw, which he also had handy. He just makes a puzzle out of Franklin, like just immediately,
Ba,
which
ba, 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 ba.
yes. So we're rid of Franklin. I'm gonna be honest with you. Rewatching this movie, I've seen it before, not for a long time. I was rooting for Leatherface often, like often, because I'm like, there's people in your house. This guy's annoying. They're on your property. Like, go ahead. Go ahead. With that being said, only Leatherface is the one I've been rooting for. We might come upon some other people who I'm not rooting for, but always him. He's number one. So they're they're running through the woods now. Sally's running, and it's very, very brushy, so she keeps getting stuck. Lucky for Leatherface, he has this chainsaw, so he can just keep cutting through everything. Sally runs to the house, tries the back door, which does not work. She goes around to the front, where she closes herself in and shuts the door. And I guess not realizing it's his house, but also how insulting. Everyone's breaking into your house. Now someone's locking you out of your own house.
Right.
Like, they're like, oh, hell no. So he starts putting the chainsaw through the door, his own door, like repeatedly. She, this is just, it's wild. She runs upstairs and she's calling for help in the house, hoping there's a nice neighbor or someone who can help her out of her predicament. And she comes upon two people, only they aren't people anymore. They're badly decomposed bodies of grandma and grandpa. Leatherface, again, he's chainsawing through the door. So Sally runs back downstairs, and the stairs are right by the door. And he just pops in right as she gets downstairs. So he chases her back upstairs. She throws herself out a window and seems surprisingly uninjured. She just gets up
Yeah.
and keeps going. So
There's a lot of jumping through windows. That's just
there's a lot. There's another chase at this point through the bushes. Sally eventually, I think she hits her head on a branch and she goes down.
yeah.
Yeah, allowing Leatherface to nearly catch her. But she gets up and keeps running and screaming at the top of her lungs while she's being chased. But it's like, it was another excessive moment. But I'm thinking too, when you're running and you're running for your life, and I understand the fear and maybe a scream here or there, the amount of energy you're exerting to scream that much, you have to think that it's better used in like
Yeah.
concentrated, like, she's not really doing
Plus
anything
that
to
you're
help
just
herself.
drawing the person chasing you to you. They can hear you screaming.
Right. There's no hope of you hiding or anything.
No.
Also, I want to note that Leatherface is so close to her in these scenes that if he sped up at all, he just would have put his chainsaw right through her back. So, um,
In fact, you know what's funny? Her shirt is sliced in the back, and I almost feel like maybe he did slice her back a little bit. You know what I'm saying?
on
Because her
purpose
whole,
or on accident.
well, that remains to be seen. We have no idea. But the whole back of her shirt in this scene is
Right.
completely split. So,
Sure is. So she actually manages to run back to the gas station from earlier, but it seems a lot closer
yeah, it
than
does.
like it seems like it only took her a few minutes to run there when it took
Yeah.
them a long time to drive. So I thought that was weird. She busts in the door where the owner is, luckily, because it's dark and it looks empty. So she falls on the floor. He's helping her off the floor. He's sitting down, trying to get her to calm down. She's checking outside, saying nobody's there. She's rambling about like just pieces of what happened. She's saying to call the police, and he breaks the news to her that there's no phone. They have to drive over to a neighboring town. He tells her he's going to get the truck and leaves her for just a moment. Also, I don't know if this is something she's putting together or this is only for us or whatever, but in the background, you hear the radio talking again about the grave robbing we heard before, while they are focused on it's like their barbecue oven, I guess, right?
It just, yeah, some meat hanging up.
And it's all ribs and sausages and stuff. But they made a point of playing the radio like bodies missing, blah, blah, blah. And then you see all of this hanging
I think she was
meat.
making a connection there, like for a moment. I don't think she suspected anything with the person that she ran to for help. But I do think in her mind, for whatever reason, I guess maybe she was just like, that's a little weird. Because her face, she has a moment where she looks like, should I be in here?
Yeah.
But then she sees the truck of the guy and she's like, okay, well, we're
Yeah.
getting out of here.
Yeah. She's like, all right. So when the man comes back, he gets like a sack, which is not a word that I like, by the way, but that's what it is. It's like a big
Burlap
pit.
sack.
Yeah. And he also pulls rope out of it, which she immediately is like, hold on, what's happening? And he tells her to cooperate and pulls a knife, or she pulls a knife on him. Someone pulls a knife.
I
That's all we
don't
know.
I think he may have started to or something, but that's not how that ended.
It's sure not because I'm pretty sure it's her. She had pulled a knife that it
Oh,
was
she
Franklin's
picked it.
knife.
Did she pick it up? I think she, no, I think she picked up a knife or something that was
Yes,
there. That's what it was.
you're
She
right.
picked up a knife.
Because it's important to note this just because what happens is he goes for the closest thing to get to defend himself or not defend himself, but to give himself the upper hand. And he grabs a broom and he's just beating her with a broom. Not even like
Not the
the
wood, the
not the
hard
wood
part.
end, like the actual like brushy
Bris,
straw.
I was so pissed at this part. And I literally wrote, he beats her with the broom with ellipses because I was just like, are you kidding me? And she's like, ah, ah, like she's actually getting hit. If she would have used that thing to poke him, I'd have poked him in the face through that damn broom and got the hell up out of there.
I know.
Just, oh,
But we start to see though a shift in his personality because when he's doing this, he's laughing. So we learn, or we don't actually ever learn this, but we learned through our investigation that this man is Drayton Sawyer.
mm-hmm.
More on that soon. So Sally is just passed out for a moment and he ties her hands behind her back. And he also stuffs a gross, bloody rag in her mouth. And he puts this, burlap sack over her head and he pulls her out to his truck. He loads her inside, like, but in the actual cab, not in the back, which I assumed that he would throw her in the back for some
Right.
reason, but whatever. So, um, this man, much like the person we met earlier, the hitchhiker, he seems off, but this wasn't something that was present the whole time. Like, we're starting to just see it now. When he gets in the car, he had made a trip like back in. He gets in the car and he's like, oh, forgot to turn off the lights. You got to do that. The cost of electricity, meh, 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 like, so he's out there too. So what's also interesting is while he's driving in the truck, he goes back and forth between assuring Sally, like, oh, you're going to be fine. We're going to get you, whatever. And also hitting her with the broomstick and
Yeah,
laughing and making like crazy smiling faces too. So we know that he's unwell.
thrown off. Yep.
He's not great. So guess who we find while we're driving down the road? The hitchhiker. We find the hitchhiker. His name is, which I hate so much, Nubbins Sawyer, but Sawyer, so they're related. So we know this now. So Drayton actually gets out and beats his ass a little bit. And
Yeah.
he's like, where have you been? I told you to stay away from the graveyard. So we're starting to get a bit of a picture of what's going on. Something in this family is not quite right. So they get back to the house. Yes, that house. It's the same house, this big white house. Drayton is screaming at Nubbins, which again pains me to say, and he's hitting him, telling him, I told you a million times not to leave your brother alone. We now can assume that his brother is Leatherface. And Drayton also tells Nubbins to get Sally out of the car. When Drayton goes in the house, he's very pissed about the front door.
Yes.
Leatherface has made a bit of a mess. Um, and he goes after him and he's beating him as well. Big old Leatherface.
He's like, you have no pride in your home. Look at our door. And I'm like, you're worried about the door. Okay. Look at the rest of your house, sir.
I know. But you feel like maybe not everyone, but I feel bad for him because Leatherface is like running and cowering, like like he's, he is sad. He's loyal to his family and he wants to do a good job. And, he's getting yelled at and stuff. So Nubbins ties Sally to a chair in another room, like a dining room, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, and Drayton barks at him to go get Grandma and Grandpa. It's Grandma and Grandpa. He also again turns on this nice tone for Sally, like, we're gonna get you some dinner in a few minutes. Don't worry, whatever. So Leatherface and Nubbins carry the corpse of their grandpa downstairs, like he's in a chair. So they're carrying the chair down the stairs, and Sally's freaking out. She's freaking out in her chair with her gag. So here's what's crazy. So they have Grandpa next to Sally at the table, the way they have it set up. They slice Sally's finger and they put it in Grandpa's mouth, which he then sucks on and kind of dances.
Yeah.
So is this a corpse or is this not a corpse? Because he looks mummified. His
Yeah.
skin is
Gross.
dry, not just dry. That's an understatement. But I was very confused because you cannot be alive and look like that.
No.
It's not possible. So I don't know what's happening here. We don't know. Um,
Also, let me just add
yeah.
that scene in particular, they were trying to fake cut Sally's finger, and it wouldn't work. So that cutting of her finger is real. It's real blood. He's putting real blood in his mouth. So yeah.
That was not in her contract, I imagine.
No, not at
Wow.
all. In fact, it was an accident. They did it by accident, but they said, "Well, we got the shot now." And this director had a lot of like very upset, disgruntled people, and he was just like, "We're rolling with all of your anger. Every mistake that happens, we're gonna roll with it. And it doesn't matter if somebody gets decapitated, we're rolling with it." So
At least we got the shot. Like,
exactly, that's his motto.
oh my gosh. So, um, the next scene we see Sally's kind of blacked out. So we come in, we hear the sound of a generator, and Sally's opening her eyes. She's sitting at the dinner table, which is adorned with taxidermy and things. Um, as she screams, this excites the people at the table who scream out as well. They're like howling and like kind of making fun of her. Um, I noted here, I noted here, Leatherface has now done some kind of nice makeup on his face. I said, or he's wearing a different face. And then I put formal wear.
Yes, because he has
Um,
switched into his formal mask now. He is the lady of the house.
yes.
So.
which is something interesting that you pointed out to me, and I missed this because I think I was wildly taking notes. He has worn three different masks. You told me in this movie, yeah?
Yes, yeah. He wears his killing mask, which is the mask you see in the beginning. Then he wears his domestic mask, which is the mask he's actually the mask and the wig he's wearing when the Drayton comes in the house and he's beating him because Leatherface has been cooking in the kitchen, so he's domesticated at that point. And then when it's time to actually serve Sally, whether she's the food or not, uh Leatherface dons a new face with full Joker looking makeup and another wig, and he puts on his best suit because he's a fine Southern lady and he has to look good
Yes.
for dinner because that is proper. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I think he went a little heavy on the eyeshadow personally.
just a little,
Just
just a
it
little.
was like the most gaudy, like bright blue eyeshadow, red lips, like the pinkest blush,
Yeah,
excessive. But he thought that he looked nice, so we're gonna give that to him. It's okay. We're gonna let that one ride. So Leatherface and Nubbins come over to Sally, and they mess with her. They're grabbing her face and they're touching her hair. We do also see here that this family, they fight a little bit. Um, Nubbins is really making the case that like him and Leatherface do all of the work and their dad, Drayton, doesn't do anything. And Drayton says, he doesn't really have the stomach for killing and, whatever. So they are talking about, it's basically time to kill Sally. And they're they say they're gonna let Grandpa take this one. So again, I'm confused because what is their corpse grandpa going to do? Um, they say, or Drayton says, that grandpa is the best killer there is. Like it's a family legacy. They pass it down. He's great at what he does. They learned from the best,
of
whatever,
course.
whatever. So they have a little wash tub that they put by grandpa's feet and they lean Sally over it and they try to put it's like you're saying the mallet from before.
Yeah,
They keep trying to put it in his hands, but he can't hold it because he's dead, you guys. He's not alive, but he is,
he is alive. Yeah,
which is why it's confusing because he appears to be dead and they keep trying to put this in his hand, but like his head is moving, but his hand won't grasp it. It doesn't make any sense. We don't know. The amount of screaming that Sally is doing in this scene, I don't know how.
I,
It's it's a
I.
lot.
This is the point. Megan had texted me and she said, "Have you watched the movie?" My exact reply to her was, "This bitch like this bitch's throat has to be sore or something like that
Yeah, yeah.
because she just was screaming so much. And I mean, as the actress, I would be pissed that I'm screaming this much. I mean, it was just overkill. It was
Yeah,
overkill screaming. Like after a while, I'm just like, are you scared or not? You just screaming for no reason now.
right. I was wondering, like, I wonder how much direction there actually was for this. Like, they were just like, go ahead, like, you're so scared, like, just be in that fear. And, like, how would you be? Like, I don't
Well,
know. Oh,
they stayed extremely close to the storyboards. They did not deviate. So everything that they were doing was real. The issue is
mm,
one, the conditions were poor. That
mm.
house was very hot. They were working in, I believe this was in Texas that they actually were shooting. It was 100 and some degrees during the day.
Oh my
And at
God.
this point, they had been shooting in this room for a very long time. All of the food on the table was rotten. Everybody was smelling. They kept taking shot after shot after shot. At this point, the actress of Sally, she is actually really upset. She's really tired. She really got cut. Like, and they basically say like during the scene, she got bruises, cuts, her finger was cut, her fear and her anguish was real. So even though they were staying to the story, her
Mm.
acting it out was her genuine feelings at this point.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, like you're talking about the storyboards, like because how many of us, anyone who's ever created anything, when you actually put what you've planned into motion, there often needs adjustments or something isn't right in the moment or whatever that you change it. So the fact that they're like they didn't really deviate from the storyboards, I find interesting that they're like,
Yeah.
just go, it doesn't matter, just go,
I
just
forget
go.
there was like one scene that they deviated from, but I don't remember what it was. But other than that, they said that they purposely tried to stay as close as they could to every single storyboard that they
Hmm,
created.
that's
So,
interesting. That's an interesting point. Okay. Well, so back in the wash bin or whatever whatever it is, Leatherface is trying to help Grandpa because he is a nice boy. He's trying to help his grandpa hit Sally with the mallet, but they can't make it happen. They get a few in there, but it's not working out. In the confusion, while the guys are all screaming kind of at each other because they're like, "Get her, Grandpa!" Like it gets chaotic. Sally is able to get away and she jumps out the window because that's a thing Sally loves to do is jump
yeah.
out of windows. And she makes a break for it. The way I wrote this is dot 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 slowly. But she's hurt. She is hurt in the scene, so it kind of makes a little more sense that she is going slow, you know. Um, but so Nubbins is right behind her, but he seems to be running just for fun because he really is right behind her. He's right behind her. And he is slicing at her a little bit, but
Yep.
he's not, it doesn't seem like he's really trying to get her. And it does also seem like, and I know that you told me a point about this before, but it does really seem like he doesn't know what to do because his regular run puts him right up against her. So he just kind of is like doing other things, but it appears like that. And that's the problem with this part is that it's like watching it like they couldn't have done this any better because it doesn't look
Yeah.
great. It doesn't.
And I mean, it's unfortunate because what I told Megan earlier was that um the Marilyn Burns, who plays Sally, was physically tired and she couldn't run any faster. So they said, just don't catch her. Don't catch her in the scene. So that's why you see Nubbins and he's like literally like,
Yeah,
but he's so close to her.
he really
And
is.
and
He's
it's just crazy.
there's one point where his front is against her back. Like it's there right there. And then even like sometimes he just sidesteps her and stuff, but he's right on top of her. Like it's really
Yeah.
wild. So Leatherface is also, just so you know, he's around. He's behind them still, though. He's further back. So Sally runs into the road and a big semi truck comes through at the same time and just runs over Nubbin. So he's out of commission because he's gone. Um, I wrote, never fear, Leatherface is on the case. Um, so he's in the road now, and the semi truck driver had pulled over. He pulls Sally into his truck, but but Sally just moves through the cab of the truck and gets out the other side, as does the truck driver. They get out the other side, which it's pulled against like a bunch of corn stalks, I think, right? It's
Yeah.
like all corn, like a giant cornfield. Um, and they're kind of just like getting like moving through like so they can run, but you have a truck. Why would you not use the truck to get away from the chainsaw man? No,
Yeah. And
no.
you grab a wrench, a giant wrench before you get out.
He does grab a wrench. He does grab a wrench. So the driver does manage to hit Leatherface with this wrench that lays him out just for a moment, and actually gets him to cut into his own leg with the chainsaw, which is like, oh,
Yeah.
that's not a fun mistake. While he's recovering from that, another truck comes by, but not a semi, just like a pickup, and Sally jumps into the back and Leatherface swirls and twirls with his chainsaw, having missed his chance to use it on Sally as the truck takes her away, which I thought was kind of a funny, silly reaction to like be like, "Oh man," and then just be like winging it around. Because it's not even really showing like anger or like anything. It's just kind of like a like just taking the chainsaw out for a stroll. But that's the end of the movie. That's where it ends. So Sally gets away in the truck, and Leatherface is just wasting gas in his chainsaw. That's it. The end. The end.
The
So This was an interesting movie. This was interesting. What I will say, and I'm sure we're going to talk more about, stuff like this, the influence that this movie had on Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses is very clear. It's very clear. And this movie has inspired so many other movies. I think when we were just talking about this before, um, I had called it like the granddaddy of like slashers. And it's not a true slasher, but for lack of a better term. So this has certainly inspired many, 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 many films. This formula, the hitchhiker on the road that has like the family farmhouse and the family's all crazy. Like that's been a tried and true horror formula.
Yeah. It in particular, it influenced Wes Craven, John Carpenter, and Rob Zombie. They're the most notable
Yeah,
directors that were directly influenced, like actually said they took this movie and like studied it
right.
in order to go
They
on and make
s-
their own stuff.
how much do you need to study it? Like it's not like so with that being said, with the fact that we're saying it's like a classic in the horror, like Leatherface is a classic villain, everyone most people know who Leatherface is. Um the fact that it spawned all of these other movies, the fact that it's the formula that's tried and true, used over and over again. This movie in and of itself is not a great movie. Now, that may make a lot of people angry, but understand that is coming from a place of great respect. You know what I mean? It's coming from a place of respect. I respect how far we've come from this as a result of this being made, that a lot of things probably wouldn't have happened without this being made. But it's not an amazing movie. But so, had you ever seen this movie before this time? This
No.
this exact incarnation you hadn't.
No, I had not.
Okay.
This was my first time seeing this one. I'm sorry, guys. I know. Horror movie person not seeing this movie. Oh my God.
There's
No.
so many though. There's
Yeah,
so many Texas Chainsaws.
the very first one I saw was the first remake of this. So I knew the story and everything because I feel like that version of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is close to this, but it's much more gory
It's
than
scarier.
this and scary. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, I did see that at least, but this one
Yeah.
I did not see.
This one was the only one I had seen for a long time, and it actually is funny because when I went to, well, I mean, I saw the rebooted one, which was solid. It was solid. When we went to Monster Mania and we saw the other Leatherfaces though, because we had seen them, I started being like, which ones were they in? Because I wanted to see them in action because one of them, and his name escapes me now, I believe his first name is Dan, I believe, um, was in Texas, what? Texas Chainsaw 3D,
Mhm.
which is actually one of my favorite Texas Chainsaws because it's another one where you get to actively root for Leatherface.
Uh,
That's what I like. Um, that was a cool one. But so yeah, so let's talk about your I mean, I think we've already made ourselves pretty clear, but let's talk about,
well,
your first viewing, what are like your takeaways?
I mean, you guys know if you've watched our reviews, I try to come at things from an objective standpoint as well as my actual personal feelings about things. So I had to actually look at what the reviews were saying about this. And so, back then mainstream critics were very like taken aback by the violence in this movie. And it gave people some outrage, but Roger Egbert, I always say his wrong. I always want to say Ebert. I think it is Ebert.
It's Ebert.
Yeah, but Ebert, he actually was like, oh, and he was the most famous reviewer at the time to actually say something. He said it was skillful filmmaking, but it was uncomfortable. But he said they had effective production, but also said that this movie had no apparent purpose. So,
I would actually
and
challenge that effective production. I'm like, does this seem effective?
I mean, when you think about what these actors were going through.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I was just looking through my notes again, and actually Gunner, like I talked to Maker earlier, and I mentioned that the person, well, Sally, her clothes were so dirty at the end that they were stiff, like with the fake blood and everything. Gunner wore the same exact sweaty, nasty suit for days.
Ugh.
So it started to smell, and he was offending people very much. Um, and so I mean, I think that the production, as far as the atmosphere, and in particular Sally's discomfort, everything you see from her is real. You
Yeah.
don't there's no, there's no faking any of the stuff that she's doing and any of her reactions. Like
Right.
at the end, when Leatherface is coming close to her with the chainsaw, she's actually scared because it's a real chainsaw. This isn't a fake chainsaw. It isn't like, if you ever go to a haunted house and somebody has a chainsaw, but there's no chain on it really,
Yeah.
so it can't hurt you. No, these were real chainsaws. And so her face when she screams and stuff, she's really scared. And so I think that goes to the effective
Sure.
production aspect.
Okay.
But there's so much else. I mean, like, people have really, like, they've given the director of this movie, Tobe Hooper, right?
hmm
They've given him praise for this movie. Like you said, it's a granddaddy. It's a
Yeah.
granddaddy movie. And I have to, not that I want to, but I have to give it its respect because
Right.
it laid the groundwork for other movies. They tried to make this movie PG, okay? And
Yeah.
Toby's reasoning was there's not a lot of blood, so kids can come see it. But the people reviewing
Take
it
the
said,
whole family. Yeah.
right. The people reviewing said, absolutely not. This cannot get, you know, an R rating. And in fact, the movie was banned in several countries.
Really.
Yeah, yeah, because it was too extreme. So I
Wow.
mean, you can't get a PG rating if it's so extreme. But, you know, as far as like the movie itself, um, what I always say his name wrong. I am so sorry. Guillermo del Toro, the del Toro. I
Gil-
can never say his first name right.
I would have said it right, but now I can't say it right because
Guillermo.
Guillermo.
Thank you.
Okay.
He even became a vegetarian after watching this movie. So, I mean, but
It makes the point. Like it
it
definitely
does.
does, and I I get that, and I get where you're going. Yes.
But I will say this. I think that this is a movie that was, for the time, as I always say,
Yep.
was groundbreaking. It is one of the first of its kind. And I think the fact that you're getting a lot of realism, because you were talking about like all the shots that seemed like extra and it was just over the top and whatnot, and scenes that didn't need to be there, like when Franklin was going to the bathroom and stuff and all that, and he like almost tripped and rolled down the hill and all that. Like, I think that a lot of this was taken of, we want to show you these people, like almost like a vlog. Like, this is what's really happening.
Yeah.
And that's what it kind of gave me. So I'm like, okay, that's interesting that we're getting that type of filmmaking with this.
I
Um
I agree.
yeah.
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 I think it's interesting though because it's like we said when this is the first one and then the ones that came after is like you see where they tightened up on those things where it's like, oh, we don't need to have a 5 minute shot of a upside down dead armadillo. We don't need to have a shot of someone careening down a hill for no reason. Like they adjusted those things and it's like anything like that where when you have the first one, it's not a perfect
Right.
creation. Like it's not. But like we said, without it, we wouldn't have gotten so many things that we love today. So I do love this movie for what it is. And I understand though in that love that it is not a fantastic movie at the same time, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Absolutely, it does. And I can honestly say I do not love this movie for any reason. I respect it, but I do not love it at all.
That makes sense. Listen, that makes sense. Also, because I don't want to leave him out and I want him to have his props. For Texas Chainsaw 3D, by the way, have you seen that one?
If I have, I don't remember. I feel like I have because I used to watch all the 3D movies, so I feel like I
Yeah.
have.
I rented it like at home, so it was not 3D to me. Um, Dan, I want to say his last name, the way it's spelled, looks like Yeager, but I bet it's Jaeger.
Probably.
he's a German folk. He walked right past us when we were waiting in line for something, and he was
Uh,
really tall. And I just remember looking at him, and he was younger too than the other leather faces. That I was like, I want to see what one he was in. And sure enough, it's one of my favorite ones.
oh,
So
nice.
yeah, I just wanted to give him his little props and his little shout out there. But yeah, there are other Texas chainsaws I like better than this one, but they wouldn't exist without this first. So we get it. So do you wanna rate it? Is it time? Is it time to rate it?
Yeah, because I don't think there's anything else that can really be said because we know like the conditions and we know, what it's done for, the horror genre as a
Oh yeah,
whole, so yeah, I can go ahead and rate it.
let's rate it.
Hmm. So if I had to rate this, I'm gonna get canceled. Um,
No.
if I had to rate this, I'm giving it a 3.5. Um, and I almost gave it a 2. So game time decision,
Game
three and a
time
half.
switcheroo.
And I have to agree with Roger when he said the production, like the effective production, because I was so annoyed by Franklin. I hated him. I thought Jerry, who was the second male to get killed, Jerry had the best outfit. I loved his outfit. He looked like classic 70s disco.
I didn't
Like,
even notice it.
oh my
Yeah.
God, he had like a flower shirt on and some bell bottoms. Like, I absolutely loved his outfit. And I wrote it in my notes. I was like, Jerry is fly. Um, and I liked him the most. And I think like the 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 blend of these characters, which even though Kirk and Pam are forgettable, like they really is like, okay, they just serve a purpose to die.
Yeah.
Um, but you really get a sense of like, okay, they're trying to make a movie here. They're trying to do something that's different. These are all no, at the time no name people, who are putting their best foot forward with this. I respect that. I respect the dedication because it was
Yeah.
over 100 degrees. People stunk, food was rotting, people were tired,
Right.
and that's like kudos to them. All of the credit goes to these people and their
Yeah.
effort of, either trying to get a good movie shot or do put their best foot forward for it because they did, good work. But other than that, this movie on its own is not a good movie. This is one of those movies that honestly it's like, oh, this is that D movie that you get the bottom of the crate at like a Blockbuster or something, and everybody's like, let's get drunk and watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and you laugh through the whole movie because it's so fucking silly. Excuse my language, but
I would have loved a
like
mystery science theater
that would have
of
been
this
good.
movie.
Yeah.
And the thing is with them, if you guys are familiar, I mean, I kind of assume if you're watching this that you like Mystery Science Theater or Riff Tracks or something. Not that we are anything like them, but we, I'm not giving ourselves that much credit. That's nuts. But it's hard for them to get credits for m movies, like the
Yeah.
rights to show them. Um, but I would have loved it so much. I would have loved it.
This would have been
Um,
a good one. Like to hear their little voiceovers over stuff. Oh my God.
so Riff Tracks did a oh God, what was it? I think they did Dawn of the Dead, and it was so funny. Like, because that's one that's a little bit of a tough watch. Like, it is a classic as well. Um, but it's a little bit of a slog, a little bit because of, when it was made and everything. Um, but it was so much funnier. Not that it's meant to be funny, but it was very funny and easier to watch with the riff tracks to go along
Yeah.
with it. So shout out to Riff Tracks for that. I love a horror movie. Also, they've both of those factions have both done Hobgoblins,
Oh,
which made
nice.
it also much easier
Much
to watch
better.
because it's like a rip off of Gremlins with like terrible puppets. And again, my brand, terrible puppets. Yes, count me in for that. Um, so yeah, I mean, those are all good points. Do you have anything else that you want to add to your
No, by all
rating?
means, what's your rating?
Okay, well, because of all of the things that we're talking about, it gave us so much, right? So I'm thinking more big picture than like this actual movie because it gave us Leatherface, who I love, who's transcended many decades, who most people recognize even if they're not big into horror movies. It gave us this formula um for all of these other movies to be made and be successful, and it gave us a lot. It did also give us Franklin, unfortunately. Uh um but with that being said, because without it, so much else wouldn't exist, I will give it a 6 because of its impact on the horror genre. I agree that it's not a great movie.
No.
Um, I did make my family watch it on one of my birthdays. I don't remember if it was the reboot that I made them watch, but on one of my birthdays, like 7 years ago on Thanksgiving, we watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre because it's about family and togetherness
Yes, it is.
and like that there. So yeah, so 6 from me, for all that it's given us. And yeah, there's not really that much else to say about
It isn't.
it.
But I will say this. Though this movie for me is trash, Leatherface by himself does get a much higher rating
Oh
because
yeah.
that character in and of itself, throughout the years and even in this movie, I respect that character and his acting. If I'm only talking about Leatherface, that gets a 7. He gets a 7 from
Yeah,
me
yeah,
in
yeah.
this movie in particular. And Leatherface character is a classic. He is an iconic character, and I really really do respect that. But like I said, this movie in particular, I just give that bad grading too. So I just want to make everybody clear, I'm not shitting on Leatherface by himself, but I
No.
am shitting a hot steamy poop all over this one, okay? Two girls, one cup on this one, all right?
That's
And
very
if
funny.
you don't know that reference, please do not look it up, okay?
Do not,
Do not look that
do
up.
not Google that. Do
No.
not, please don't. Um, I will say also, with that being said, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which came out in 1986, I'm just going to tell you what Wikipedia says. It's a black comedy, so I'm into it.
Oh
It's a
God.
slasher film, and it stars, we get Leatherface back, so that's a big draw for me. But in 2, we also get Bill Moseley, who I love deeply. So that one's a step in the right direction. It's funny because even the cover art, which I wish I could, if I held it up to the screen, it
Yeah.
would be so distorted. It even looks so 80s.
I've
Um,
definitely seen that one. I've
yeah,
seen
like
that cover.
Leatherface's whole thing, like he's I don't know. He's wearing a suit with like a flat, like he looks very dapper. It's weird. But yes, that one seems a bit better. But there are, like I said, there are better incarnations of this movie. Some of the sequels are better, the prequels are better. Many of them are better than this one. So it's not that the whole franchise is garbage. It's just that, this one's a little lackluster. Um, but yeah, I mean, guess that's pretty much it. I do just want to show you guys. I got the most beautiful tumbler from Spirit Halloween, and you can't get them anymore. If you can find them, definitely snatch them up. But can we just talk about like,
Ooh,
can
it's
we,
so pretty.
can we just, and I know if you're listening, you're so rude because I can't see what you're talking about. I got a bedazzled, like a fake Stanley tumbler that is black with a red blood drip. Again, bedazzled. It's absolutely beautiful.
It is.
So I just wanted to share that with you because also it's very heavy and it takes some effort to lift. So if anytime during this video something you're like, what are you doing? It's because I'm essentially lifting weights with this metal tumbler.
But it's gorgeous and it's the perfect season for that tumbler.
Yes, because we're in October now. So it's the perfect season for spooky tumbler. I'm going to be using this on every season, every work call, like the skulls of my enemies to drink out of, except it's a fake Stanley tumbler. It's fine. Everything's fine. But yeah, I guess I don't have anything else to add for this movie.
No, I guess
So
we
I guess
can,
we could take it home. Yep.
yeah, we'll close it out. So, with that being said, Thank you for embracing the madness with us for another episode of the Horror Ghouls podcast. We hope you survived our breakdown of the blood-soaked nightmare that is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which didn't have a lot of blood, okay?
PG rating.
Though we can't guarantee that your sanity is still intact after this review, of
Mm.
course. I hope that you felt the terror creeping in because I'm sure we certainly did. Okay.
I felt it.
Yes. So if the horrors of the Sawyer family still haunt your thoughts, or if you have any other sinister comments, questions, or theories, please reach out to us if you dare on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram at The Horror Ghouls. And don't forget to subscribe for more unsettling deep dives and haunting revelations. So until we meet again, stay spooky, keep your fears close, and remember, it's never wise to walk into a stranger's house. And if you encounter a towering man wielding a chainsaw, you might just deserve your demise.
And definitely don't try to date him because I would. So we'll leave you with that. We'll leave you with that. Have a good one. See you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.